Hi, hello there everyone. My name is Sally Ashby and I'm the Director of Learning at Women's Work Lab. Firstly, my apologies that I can't be there with you in person as planned. I hope that in some way this might go some way to just filling in some of the gaps in advance of people starting next week. And I know it's not the same as me being in the room and being able to answer questions, but if you've got any questions at any point, please do just drop me an email or pick up the phone. That is absolutely fine. So what I thought I'd do today was give you a little bit of background about the Women's Work Lab, what we do, why we do it, how we do it, a little bit of background about the way we recruit our mums, and the content that we cover on the programme, the way the programme works, and then go on to talk a little bit about the specific mums that you've got joining you at Hargreaves Lansdown from next week, and some things that you might want to think about as managers in advance of those people starting. So as a little bit of background about me to give you an idea of sort of where I come at this from. My background is HR. I was head of HR at Bristol Airport. So I have worked with managers exactly like you on onboarding staff, on working with DE&I staff. And so I've got that kind of business background combined with the work that I do at Women's Work Lab, just to kind of reassure you. I said I was head of HR at Bristol Airport for 8 years, and before that I worked for the Walt Disney Company, I worked for Gordon Ramsay Holdings, I worked for the Environment Agency, so I've kind of got a breadth of business background combined with the work I do at Women's Work Lab. So now at the Women's Work Lab, I am Director of Learning, which basically means that I'm responsible for all of the content and the delivery of the programmes that we run at Women's Work Lab. So the way the programme works, and this is what all of the mums who are joining you next week have been through, the programme that we designed is made up of a combination of work experience and classroom-based training. So the classroom-based training is 5 weeks in the classroom, 2 days a week, and then 4 weeks of work placement, and then followed up with 2 weeks of back in the classroom training. And after that, we support the mums. We say we support them for a year beyond that, but really we don't have any graduates who've kind of ever left us. We have some graduates who come back and look for support on things like CV writing and applications and job hunting a couple of years down the line after they left the programme, which is absolutely fine. And during that time, we provide one-to-one coaching and career support to the mums past the end of the programme. So the nature of kind of where we came from in terms of Women's Work Lab. Women's Work Lab was started by two brilliant women you might know, Rachel Mostyn and Camilla Rigby. And we specifically designed this programme to sit in the space which we felt wasn't supported, which was around mums who wanted to go back to work, but who weren't returning to professional careers. So we felt like there was a lot of provision and a lot of support out there for women who wanted to return, for example, into financial services or into the legal profession, but there was very little out there for people who'd taken a career gap but then wanted to go back to work after having often children, but having had a career gap of some description, but who didn't have professional backgrounds. Often they haven't been to university, but they are in receipt of benefits. And so that's where the Women's Work Lab, that's the kind of space that the Women's Work Lab operates in. We recruit mums from across the Southwest. And they are mums who have been in receipt of benefits in some way, shape or form and are looking to get back into work. What we discovered really early on in kind of when we first started was that the mums who did the best on our programme, the mums who had the most successful outcomes, were those mums who demonstrated some form of resilience. And I know that's a word that kind of gets sort of bandied around a bit in recruitment, and as a good thing that you want to recruit people for. But in particular with our mums, they are people who have been through some stuff, but they are determined to come out the other side and rise. And so we've had mums on the programme, for example, who we had one woman and her house burnt down. She lost absolutely everything. And we've had people, over 50% of the mums on our programme have been in some way, shape or form survivors of domestic abuse. We've got a lot of people, a high proportion of people with either with additional needs or their children have got additional needs in terms of learning ability. And so a lot of people who've got children on EHCPs or who are fighting for EHCPs, fighting for additional support for their children, basically. But for whatever the background is, all of the mums that have been on our programme were recruited to our programme because of this demonstration of resilience. And so we specifically go out and look for it, and we recruit for it during the recruitment process. The way the recruitment works is that we are always oversubscribed. And so the mums who are with you were selected by us to attend our programme. We have about 4 to 5 applications for every kind of position on the programme that we have. So we're always oversubscribed. And so we do go through an active recruitment process for those mums. Okay, so in terms of what we cover on the programme, and so what the mums that are coming to you will have covered, the structure of the training part of our programme is this idea of HIVE, so HIVE. And we talk about history, insight, vision, and employability. So within the history section, we think about and talk about the things that have happened to our mums before, just like those things that I just described, that stuff they've been through. Very often the mums arrive in our room with very little confidence. They, before they even walk in the door, they're questioning what they're doing there. They're wondering how they're going to fit. They believe that nobody will offer them a job, no matter what programme they go through, no matter what training they do. Why would anybody offer them a job? But we talk about their history. We actively encourage a conversation about the things that they've achieved, the things that make them remarkable, the things that they've done. And very often there's way more stuff than they would ever give themselves credit for. And that's what I will say about the mums throughout the whole of this, is that very often the way they talk about themselves, and the way they still talk about themselves, even though we've tried to support them with it, the way they talk about themselves very much is about putting themselves down because they doubt themselves constantly. And that's come from a lot of different places. And we talk about this on the programme, but we talk about this idea of the voices that you have in your head and the messages that you've received over the course of your life. We talk a bit about this idea of your shitty committee. These are the kind of committee of people inside your head that have come from maybe your parents, your partners, your ex-partners, your community leaders, your teachers, those girls at school, the influences that you have in your life. And the sum of those people make up your shitty committee. Those people who've given you messages over the course of your life and you've internalised them, and you've lost sight of the fact that those aren't your voice. They're not your own thoughts. They're coming from those people who you at times in your life listened to. And it's okay to recognise that you weren't born with those voices, and also that those voices are not your voices. And it's okay to kind of say, thank you very much, but not today. And so we talk really actively on the programme about this on a number of occasions in that history section and beyond. So after we talked about history and we talked about the past, we park that and we say, right, let's put that to one side and now focus on who you are today. And we do a lot of work, and often it's reflected in quite corporate training programmes. So we talk about values, we talk about strengths, we talk about personality preferences. We use MBTI as a tool, which having talked to Karen, you've used internally as well. So our mums have gone through the MBTI programme. They know their MBTI type. And whilst they may not be experts in it, if reminded, you could have a really good conversation with them about what their MBTI type is and what that means. We talk about what their MBTI type and their preferences mean for the workplace. So they do have an understanding of what it means to be an introvert or an extrovert, what it means to make decisions based on thinking and feeling. They understand kind of how they take in information and how they value information and how they organise themselves. And we talk really proactively about that and what that means for work. And so there's kind of like that background and that understanding there. Again, whilst not experts, actually it's there if you want to have that conversation with them. And we talk about what their profile type means in terms of what the way they can sell themselves, what that means for what they've got to offer an employer. And so, yeah, feel free to have conversations with our mums about that. So we talk about insight, so the things that define them and who they are today. And then we look at vision. So we look at VHIVE, look at a V for vision, what the future holds. We do some career planning, we do some envisioning, and get them to really start to think about what they want for the future and what they want for their families. And then employability, I find the E at the end, is very much the hard and fast stuff around writing CVs, about interview skills. Very often our mums haven't had a lot of experience. Some of them have had some opportunity at interviews, sometimes on a very informal basis because of the nature of the work they've been doing. And so, yeah, we do a lot of kind of hard and fast prep with them about what it means to go back into the world of work. As the sum of that, HIVE, is the sum of our training, the kind of teaching part of our programme. In addition to that, as I said, the mums will have done a 4-week work placement with an employer, range of different employers, and we try our best to match up our mums with something they're interested in or something we think matches up to something they've said in the training room. And those work placements are not supposed to be they're not supposed to be like the perfect outcome, the perfect employment long term. They're meant to be an opportunity to just try out going back to work and seeing how it feels. So your mums will have been on a work placement to a range of different places, but very often they've got brilliant stories and they've got wonderful things to talk about in terms of what their experience during that time. And so please feel free to ask our mums about it. They've often they've had a great time and very willing to tell people about it. So feel free to have that conversation. Okay, so the mums that are joining you from next week onwards have been through that Hive programme. They've been and done their work placement. They all applied for you. And I worked with Karen and the team over at Hargreaves and to kind of design the overall returnship and to support with the promotion and the kind of the work behind the scenes in terms of getting some of our mums over the line. My voice is going, I don't know why, sorry. And we've got to the point now, hopefully, where all of the mums are ready to start either next week or in the next couple of weeks with you, which is why we thought it would be a good opportunity to just give you a bit of a heads up about where the mums have been before, what they've been doing, but also give you a few things to think about in terms of managing our mums. Now, I've spoken to Karen about you guys and who you are and kind of what you bring to the table in terms of support and management ability. So I am not here to teach you to suck eggs. Like I've got a background in management development, but you guys know your business, you know your teams, you know your job better than I do. What I wanted to do though was give you a bit of, I guess, insight in terms of the sum of my experience with the mums, both the mums that are coming to you, but also more broadly. We've worked with nearly 300 mums over the course of, since we started the programmes. And I guess that's given me quite an insight into how to get the best out of those people. And so what I wanted to do was kind of pass that on. But if at any point you've got any questions, then feel free to shout. I guess what I would say is that one of the biggest things about working with these mums is that a combination of the fact that their confidence, no matter how much work we've done with them, their confidence is still pretty near rock bottom. And until they start with you, they are still questioning why you've ever given them jobs. And genuinely, I've recruited hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people into different organisations, and I would give these mums a job any day of the week over a lot of people that I did give jobs to. They are brilliant mums. They have got a huge range of skills and abilities, and you'll see that when you start working with them. And yet the way they talk about themselves will always, they will put themselves down. They will constantly use words around what they're saying to kind of downplay what they're saying. And what I want to urge you to do is try desperately to see past that and to not take them at face value. Assume that they have an awful lot more to give than they might initially present to you, and take time to try and dig that out of them. Try and encourage them to feel comfortable and confident enough to talk to you about stuff and to bring their whole self to work. Because there's very often, if you take what they say at face value, very often you miss a whole pile of depth that you don't get when they're downplaying their skills and their abilities. And what I will say is that's not, I've worked with lots of people where, people will make throwaway comments about, I can't, and almost like trying to be a bit self-effacing or with our mums, it's incredibly deep rooted. Like there's no part of them that is putting this on. There is no part of them that's doing it to sort of be polite, or like, it is incredibly deep rooted that they don't trust themselves, and they don't have the confidence to put themselves out there. So from a management perspective, what I would encourage you to do is invite them into conversations, invite them in, and ask their opinion about things. Don't assume that because they kind of don't proactively contribute that they don't have an opinion, or that they don't have something that they want to say. I think especially in the beginning, everything that you can do to encourage them to make sure that they understand that they are seen and that they are valued, the more that will help their confidence to be able to bring stuff into the room. Because again, they've got an awful lot to give, but it's about making sure that they have the support and your confidence in them to be able to bring that out. I think another kind of key thing that I will say is that our mums work incredibly hard, and very often they're quite trusting in authority. And so very often they will get their head down and they will get on with stuff. But sometimes they are quite worried about asking when they don't know something, simply because they don't want to be perceived as not knowing stuff. They don't want to be perceived as not as clever as the people around them, or not as advanced as the people around them. And very often they're quite simple questions that if they can ask that question, it would get solved quite quickly. And so what I would encourage you to do is check in with your mums regularly. Don't assume, and I don't mean this in a patronising way, and I encourage you not to be patronising with it, but assume that they know nothing, and encourage them to ask questions as you go along, but make sure that from the very beginning you tell them everything. Don't assume that they know anything. And I know you've got apprentices starting at the same time who often haven't had any experience in work, or very little experience in work. And I'd encourage you to, even when our mums demonstrate an awful lot of knowledge and ability, make sure you take things right back down to basics, and then at least give them the opportunity to say, well, look, if I'm telling you something that you already know, please just let me know. Whereas if you take it right back down to basics, even if what you're getting from our mums is a real level of competence and knowledge and experience and professionalism, actually, if you take it right back down to basics, it will make sure that it covers off anything that maybe they're a bit too embarrassed to ask. I think from a management perspective, setting that relationship up so that actually there is no question that's too stupid. What you might often find is that some of the really, really kind of basic stuff around that you and I might know about what it means to be in the world of work, sometimes that stuff isn't quite there. But actually that doesn't affect their ability to do the job. It doesn't affect how much potential they have. But sometimes it's amazing the things that they might not have experienced by being out of work for so long. So almost don't assume that they've got that kind of basic understanding about what it means to be at work. So take it right back down to basics when you're explaining stuff. And then it almost gives that in for being able to cover everything off, not make any assumptions, and then make sure that everything, the relationship is set up to be able to ask questions. Again, I think because they've been out of work for so long, some of those work norms might be missing. And I think that's part of what they're really looking forward to being able to go back to work and do, is being able to get back into work and just be with adults and have adult conversations. And so being able to remind our mums about some of those work norms, which might be things like, it might be stuff about dress, it might be stuff about where you have lunch, it might be some things that are practical things about like logging on to systems, or things you're allowed to do. Very often the questions that I'm most surprised about are things like almost an expectation that everybody's going to be monitoring your minute by minute work, because maybe in the past what they've done is worked in a call centre where that's absolutely been the case. And so those kind of work norms about what it means to work in an office, what it means to work in professional services, financial services, actually if that's missing, there's an opportunity there for you to kind of like influence that work norms piece as well. Okay, those were my kind of key bits that I wanted to cover off. But as I said, I have Apologies that I've not been able to be in the room with you. Hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight in terms of the things we've covered on the Women's Work Lab programme, how the mums have come to us, and then just some tips and things for thinking about next week when they start with you. I'm going to be coming in, Karen and I have talked about me coming in a few weeks' time once our mums have started with you, to just kind of sit down and pull out some of the learnings, feedback for us about maybe things that have gone well with the mums, things that that were missing that you thought should be there. And that we can bring into the Women's Work Lab programme, but also if there's any additional support that we can provide in terms of the way the mums have settled in, or any questions that you might have got. But as I said, in advance of that, if you've got any questions, please feel free to drop me a message. As I said, my name is Sally Ashby and my email address is sally@womensworklab.co.uk. So sally@womensworklab.co.uk. And my mobile number is 07827 952285. So I'll see you soon. I hope everything goes brilliantly next week and the week after for your start dates. And as I said, any problems, any questions, please just let me know. Thanks ever so much. Take care and have a good day. Bye.